People rarely say, "I made a bad choice because I ignored the warning signs." More often, they say, "It was not that bad, anyone would have done the same," or, "I had no other option." That is rationalization. The mind building a reasonable sounding story after the decision. Rationalizing means explaining a choice in a way that protects the self-image, even if the explanation is incomplete. It is not always intentional lying. Often, the person partly believes the story because admitting the truth would create shame, regret, or conflict. The mind wants consistency. If you see yourself as careful but make a reckless purchase, there is tension. One way to reduce that tension is to change the behavior next time. Another way is to change the story. "I deserved it, it was a smart investment," or, "the deal was too good." Rationalization is common after money mistakes. Someone may buy an expensive phone they cannot afford and then focus only on the camera quality, the discount, or the need to stay productive. Those details may be real, but they may not be the full reason for the purchase. It also appears in relationships. A person may ignore repeated disrespect because they do not want to admit they are attached to someone unreliable. Instead, they say the partner is just stressed, busy, misunderstood, or bad at texting. Sometimes that may be true. Sometimes it becomes protection from a harder truth. The first mechanism is ego protection. Most people want to feel decent, smart, loyal, and reasonable. When a choice threatens that image, the mind softens the edges. The story becomes less about accuracy and more about emotional survival. Another mechanism is sunk cost. After spending time, money, or emotion, people do not want to admit the investment may have been poor. So they defend the decision more strongly because admitting the mistake would make the cost feel real. Rationalization becomes dangerous when it repeats. One excuse after one mistake may not ruin a life. But if every warning sign gets explained away, the person loses contact with feedback. The same kind of bad choice keeps returning under different names. A common mistake is thinking rationalization only happens after obviously foolish decisions. It can happen after small things too. Skipping exercise, avoiding a call, overpromising at work, or staying quiet when something needs to be said. The mind can defend tiny avoidance as strongly as big mistakes. Rationalization often uses half-truths. That is what makes it convincing. Maybe the phone did have a discount. Maybe the partner was stressed. Maybe the job really was demanding. The question is whether those facts explain the whole choice or only make the choice easier to defend. One sign of rationalization is emotional defensiveness. If a simple question feels like an attack, there may be a protected story underneath. The person may not be defending the decision itself. They may be defending the identity attached to the decision. Another sign is changing standards. Before the choice, someone may say debt is dangerous. After the purchase, they call the debt strategic. Before the relationship, they value respect. After the disrespect, they call it complexity. The rule changes to protect the outcome. The way out begins with separating explanation from excuse. An explanation helps you understand why something happened. An excuse prevents you from learning from it. The same sentence can become either one depending on whether it leads to responsibility. A useful question is, what would I tell a friend in the same situation? Distance can weaken rationalization. Many people see a friend's pattern more clearly than their own because they are not protecting the same self-image. Another question is, what fact am I avoiding? It may be a bank balance, a message history, a missed deadline, a pattern of behavior, or a feeling of embarrassment. Rationalization usually works by moving attention away from one uncomfortable fact. Healthy self-honesty does not require cruelty. You can admit a bad choice without calling yourself a bad person. That distinction matters. If honesty feels like self-destruction, the mind will keep defending itself. If honesty feels like repair, change becomes easier. Another warning sign is relief after finding an excuse. If the explanation mainly reduces guilt but does not change the next action, it may be protecting the pattern rather than helping the person learn. Rationalization is not always useless. In small doses, it can help people survive disappointment. But when it blocks feedback, it becomes expensive. The person feels emotionally protected while the real problem keeps growing. The practical move is to look for repeated explanations. If the same kind of excuse appears around spending, dating, health, work, or conflict, it may be more than a one-time reason. It may be a pattern asking to be named. Rationalization can also borrow moral language. A person may call a selfish choice self-care, a fearful choice wisdom, or an avoidant choice peace. The words may sound mature while the pattern stays unchanged. Rationalization loses power when the truth becomes safe enough to say, "I wanted approval. I was scared. I ignored the cost. I did not want to be alone." These sentences can hurt at first, but they bring the mind back to reality. Rationalization becomes easier when the group supports it. If friends, coworkers, or online communities repeat the same excuse, the person may feel validated instead of challenged. Social approval can turn a weak explanation into a shared story. The goal is not to become perfect or brutally self-critical. The goal is to stop using clever explanations to protect choices that keep hurting you. Once the story becomes more honest, the next choice can finally become different. The way out is not endless confession. It is one honest adjustment. If the person can change the behavior that the excuse was protecting, the story no longer has to work so hard. Rationalization often sounds polished because the person is arguing with themselves first. By the time they explain the choice to someone else, the story may already feel complete. That is why challenging the story directly can create defensiveness. The person may feel as if their whole identity is being questioned, not just one decision. The pattern becomes easier to spot when the explanation keeps changing. If one reason disappears and a new one immediately replaces it, the mind may be protecting the choice rather than examining it. Honest reasoning can update. Rationalization only keeps moving the target so the conclusion stays safe. A practical repair is to name both truths at once. Someone can say, "I understand why I did it, and it still caused damage." That sentence matters because it keeps compassion and responsibility together. Without compassion, honesty feels unbearable. Without responsibility, the pattern repeats. The pattern becomes healthier when the person can say the uncomfortable motive without collapsing into shame. Naming the motive gives the next decision a chance to be different. The strongest sign of progress is not perfect decision-making. It is faster recovery after a bad choice. When the person can admit the real motive sooner, repair the damage sooner, and adjust the next step sooner, rationalization loses its control over the story. Rationalization often sounds polished because the person is arguing with themselves first. By the time they explain the choice to someone else, the story may already feel complete. That is why challenging the story directly can create defensiveness. The person may feel as if their whole identity is being questioned, not just one decision. The pattern becomes easier to spot when the explanation keeps changing. If one reason disappears and a new one immediately replaces it, the mind may be protecting the choice rather than examining it. Honest reasoning can update. Rationalization only keeps moving the target so the conclusion stays safe.